Welcome back to State of the Union. It may be days before all the votes are counted, but Republicans are already pointing fingers at one another, with GOP lawmakers in both the House and the Senate criticizing their leadership for failing to meet expectations. Just as former President Trump teases a special announcement next week. Here with me now, a Republican governor who's led a blue state, Maryland, since 2015, Larry Hogan. Governor, thank you so much for joining me.
Good morning.
You've kind of been on an island, maybe a few others are with you, as a Republican warning against GOP extremism and specifically election denialism. How do you interpret the results?
Well, yeah, I've been talking about this for years, and it seemed as if I was the only one talking about it, but today there are a whole lot more people talking about it. And the way I would interpret it, look, this should have been a huge red wave. It should have been one of the biggest red waves we've ever had, because the President Biden's approval rating was so low, one of the lowest historically. More than 70% of the people thought the country was going in the wrong direction, and yet we still didn't perform. And I think common sense conservatives that focused on talking about issues people cared about, like the economy and crime and education, they did win. But people who tried to relitigate the 2020 election and focused on conspiracy theories and talked about things the voters didn't care about, they were almost universally rejected. And I think it's basically the third election in a row that Donald Trump has cost us the race. And it's like, 3 strikes, you're out.
Well, do you think that's true? Because we've heard that after 1 strike and 2 strikes, to keep your analogy going.
Well, the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And Donald Trump, it kept saying, we're going to be winning so much, we'll get tired of winning. I'm tired of losing. I mean, that's all he's done.
So you don't think that this is just a blip and that Republicans will return to being, well, it's kind of still the party of Trump, but embracing the party of Trump? You think this time is different?
If you lose over and over again to what's really not that great of a team, you've got to reassess, is it time to rebuild? And you have to go back and think, how do we have a more hopeful, positive vision? How do we appeal to a broader group of voters? Because in some cases we fired up the base, but we turned off wide swaths of swing voters, and it's why we didn't perform.
Former President Trump is teasing a very big announcement on Tuesday night.
Huge.
He could announce his 2024 bid to run for president again. What do you think will happen if he does?
Well, there's no question he's still the 800-pound gorilla, and it's still a battle. It's going to continue for the next 2 years. I would just say that we're 2 years out from the next election, and we're just trying to, the dust is settling from this one. I think it'd be a mistake. As I mentioned, Trump's cost us the last 3 elections, and I don't want to see it happen a 4th time.
Could he if he does announce, could he cost Republicans the runoff in Georgia?
No question about that. I mean, it's not as consequential now. We still would like to win Georgia, but we're not going to win back the Senate as a result. And that's Donald Trump's fault.
I have to ask you about something that he posted on his social media website, Truth Social. He used a racist comment to lash out at another potential 2024 competitor, your fellow Republican Governor Glenn Youngkin. He wrote, "Youngkin," separating his last name. Now that's an interesting take. Sounds Chinese, doesn't it? In Virginia, couldn't have won without me. Your wife and children are Korean Americans. You've made a point of fighting against Asian American hate as governor. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it was definitely distasteful and inappropriate, not only because I don't think my friend Glenn Youngkin deserved to be attacked like that, but it was also, it's Asian hate against a white governor, and making fun of Asians. And he didn't even have his nationalities right, because Young Kim would be Korean as opposed to Chinese. But it's just more of the same from Donald Trump, insults and attacks, and that's one of the reasons why the party's in such bad shape.
Is it racist?
It is racist.
One Republican who had an unequivocally strong election night was another one of your fellow Republican governors, Ron DeSantis in Florida. A growing number of Republicans who feel similarly to you about Trump, saying we have to move ahead, are saying, well, maybe Ron DeSantis is our guy. Would he make a good president?
Well, he certainly had a great night the other night in Florida. It was a big win for Ron DeSantis. Florida is becoming more and more red as a result of, I think there's 600,000 new Republicans in Florida because it's kind of flight out of blue states into Florida. He did a great job picking up Hispanic voters in Miami and South Florida, which is kind of what we did in our last race. We won Hispanics, but it was a good night for him, and he's certainly one of the important voices for the party.
It's no secret that you are considering running in 2024. What is your status now? Will you run?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm doing. I'll be heading down to Florida tomorrow with all my fellow governors. We're all going to talk about what happened, and we're going to welcome a couple of new governors. And then I'll be flying out. I'll do a thing with RJC. I'll be on a stage with Mike Pence and Mike Pompeo. And at the end of the month, I'm going to have a big thing in Annapolis, a summit. We're going to bring in people from all around the country, and we're going to have a big celebration of our 8 years of success. And we're going to take a look. I still have to do my day job until January 18th, and then
You can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, that's true. I'll be freed up and unleashed.
And will you be unleashed towards a 2024 run?
I think there's probably, I've been saying since 2020 that we have to get back to a party that appeals to more people, that can win in tough places like I've done in Maryland. And I think that lane is much wider now than it was a week ago.
One quick question before I let you go. Kevin McCarthy is working the phones. He wants to be Speaker if Republicans do take the House. Should he be?
I think most Americans aren't paying much attention to palace intrigue and what's going on. I know it's the focus of everybody here.
Well, it's a constitutional position.
But most
it's a big
people,
deal.
The inner battle about who might be in charge. Look, I think the people on the far right really lost this election, and now they want to try to take that over. But it's going to be a very slim margin. Kevin McCarthy's got work to do. There's no question about that.
Governor Larry Hogan, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Nice to see you.